Well, since there's some kind of rule now on YouTube that you have to make one video per day at least talking about Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC, I'm throwing my hat into the ring for today, Tuesday, with my thoughts. Now, I guess the latest news today is that Texas and Oklahoma have officially petitioned the SEC for membership. They sent a joint letter asking to join the SEC effective July 1st, 2025. Now, and that's what I want to talk about in this video, the date. When will Texas and Oklahoma join the SEC? What year, what season will Texas and Oklahoma first play an SEC schedule? Well, their current TV rights contract within the Big 12 runs to the 2025 season, and to get out of that, they owe $80 million. That's a lot of money. Even for schools like Texas and Oklahoma, $80 million is a ton of money. A ton of money. And technically, if they join and play in the SEC before that, they owe that money. Now, I'm assuming there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes in terms of trying to negotiate some buyouts and some different things like that. I know there's a meeting scheduled on Thursday, I believe, an SEC realignment meeting. And on Friday, the Oklahoma Board of Regents is meeting to discuss some things. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this week, beginning of next week, we have a date for when Texas and Oklahoma will join the SEC, and that date will not be 2025. Can you imagine Texas and Oklahoma having to play 3 more seasons in the Big 12, knowing they're leaving on July 1st, 2025? It's just a bad situation for everyone involved. It's bad for the Big 12. It's bad for Texas. It's bad for Oklahoma. It's bad for the other teams in the Big 12. I think this is going to get resolved some kind of way. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Texas and Oklahoma are playing an SEC schedule in 2022. 2022, next season. I just would not be shocked at all. These two teams here, this isn't, no disrespect to Texas A&M and Missouri, this isn't Texas A&M and Missouri. And we've all had a lot of fun over the last 3 or 4 days, doing a little bit of trash talking with Texas and Oklahoma fans about congratulations, get ready to go 8-4 every year. The reality is Texas and Oklahoma are 2 of the biggest brands in all of college football, period. Now, I'm not talking about, their teams right now. I mean, Oklahoma, I think, happens to be one of the best teams in America right now. Could win a national title this year. Texas, maybe a year or 2 away from competing for something if they get a good quarterback, some good recruiting classes, and if Steve Sarkisian works out as a head coach. But too many unknowns for Texas to compete for a title this year. But what I mean is, if you ask an average football fan to name 20 football programs, Texas and Oklahoma are going to be on that list. You ask somebody to name 10, a lot of times Texas and Oklahoma are going to show up on that list. These are 2 huge names in the college football world. They're huge names today. They were huge names 10 years ago. They were huge names 20 years ago. They were huge names 30 years ago. These aren't flash-in-the-pan teams. So this is a big deal. And it could happen as early as next year. $80 million is a lot of money, but Texas and Oklahoma have a lot of weight to throw around and a lot of money to throw around. Who knows? Maybe the SEC chips in and pays some of that $80 million. I don't know, but I'm going to be honest. I don't see any way possible that Texas and Oklahoma remain in the Big 12 till 2025. For a lot of the reasons I already mentioned. It would just be a terrible situation for everybody involved. Also, I'm not convinced there will be a Big 12 in 2025. I'm not even convinced there will be a Big 12 in 2022. I'm not convinced there will be a Big 12 in 2022. I don't know who they can get now to save it. I really don't. And you would have to add, really, you need to get to 16 teams, right? They're now at 8. And name the 8 in your head. They need serious help. I think it's more likely that about half the teams left in the Big 12, 4 or so, join Texas and Oklahoma in leaving the Big 12. I think that's more likely than the fact that than Texas or Oklahoma playing a Big 12 schedule through 2025. I don't think anybody will be playing a Big 12 schedule in 2025 or 2024 or 2023. I mean, what do you think is more likely? Do you think it's more likely that somehow the Big 12 adds a bunch of group of 5 teams? Even if they got the best of the best within the group of five, right? Even if the Big 12 went out and got Cincinnati, Memphis, Central Florida, Houston, Boise State, whatever, name them, and got up to 16 teams, I don't think that's enough to save it. I don't. So what do you think is more likely? Do you think it's more likely that Texas and Oklahoma stay in the Big 12 till 2025, or do you think it's more likely they're playing an SEC schedule in 2022? I think it's more likely they're playing an SEC schedule in 2022. I know Texas A&M is upset, and they were told one thing, and now another thing is happening. And from that perspective, I don't really blame Texas A&M for being upset. They were lied to. I mean, they were promised this wouldn't happen. So I don't blame Texas A&M for being upset. Texas A&M also needs to realize that money, at least right now in the world of college football, is the driving factor and focus. It's literally all that matters in college football right now from every different perspective. It seems to be what the players are concerned about right now. It definitely seems to be what the schools and the conferences are concerned about right now, is money. And adding a Texas and Oklahoma equals money. Again, this has nothing to do with anybody's feelings towards the Oklahoma Sooners or towards the Texas Longhorns, or how good or bad you think Texas or Oklahoma might fare in the SEC over the next few years. That doesn't have anything to do with it. These are two of the top brands in college football, period. If the New York Yankees finish last in the American League this year, are they somehow not important to the landscape of Major League Baseball anymore after that? No. And I'm not necessarily comparing Texas or Oklahoma directly to the Yankees. I'm just using them to make a point. There are some teams and some brands that are just bigger than the sport, and Texas and Oklahoma are two of those brands, period. Notre Dame is the same way. Alabama is the same way. Even a team like Michigan, who has been barely treading water for 20 years or more, it is a very recognizable top-tier brand in college football. And I just hear a lot of people saying, I don't understand how this benefits the SEC, adding Texas. Texas isn't even that good. Texas is a brand. Texas equals money. And that's what this is about. This is about money and survival. This is about being the first to do something so that you get the best of what's available, instead of being the last to do it so you get what's left over. How would you like to be the Big Ten and the ACC right now? And even worse, the Pac-12. This is about money. This is about looking ahead. This is about forward thinking. Whether you like the idea of it or not, college football is headed towards the four super conference model. And in my opinion, that's the way it's headed. That seems to be the best of the, at least in my opinion, that's the best of the available options or scenarios. I definitely don't like the 20-team thing that I hear floating around, where now the SEC wants to get Clemson, Florida State, Ohio State, and Michigan. I'm not for that at all. I want some separation in college football, don't you? I mean, I don't want it to be just the SEC and no one else. I mean, what fun is it to brag about how good the SEC is if there's no one to beat? Because they're all in the SEC. I mean, how fun would that be? Not fun at all. So if you're the Big Ten, you got to go out and add a couple of teams, and you got to get the best two that you can possibly get, right? And who that ends up being is up to the Big Ten, I guess. Do they go after one or two of the Big 12 leftovers? Do they go after some of the top two group of five? I don't know. That's up to the Big Ten. We'll see what they do. ACC needs to lock Notre Dame down. Notre Dame's the only big prize left. That's it. And again, it doesn't matter I've made a living basically from laughing at Notre Dame's performance in big games for the last 30 years. But there ain't a conference in America that wouldn't take them. And if you don't understand that, then you don't know what's driving all this. And I guess that would be my response to the people who can't seem to understand what benefit the SEC has from taking Texas. I keep hearing that a lot. Okay, Texas hasn't been great for 10 years or so. They had the one good year in 2018 where they beat an SEC team, Georgia, in the Sugar Bowl, and they've had some disappointing seasons. I'm not going to pretend that they haven't. But if you don't understand the value that Texas brings, then you're just missing the point of what's going on. But anyway, that's my official prediction. They put the letter out today, say we want to join the SEC in 2025. Hey, that's great. That's amazing. There ain't a circumstance I can think of where I think it actually takes that long. I just don't think it will. My money is on Texas and Oklahoma playing an SEC schedule next season, 2022. I don't see how Texas and Oklahoma can basically just float for the next 3 years knowing they're landing in the SEC in 2025. It's going to happen a lot sooner rather than later, and I wouldn't be surprised to hear some sort of announcement made into this week or early next week. I really wouldn't. Who's going to pay the money, the $80 million for the schools or whatever? I don't know. They'll figure it out. In the grand scheme of things, $80 million is a ton of money. I'm not pretending it's not. But in the grand scheme of things, in the world of college football, it's a drop in the bucket. And it'll get paid. And I don't think the Big 12 will be around to force Texas or Oklahoma to wait that long anyway. I just don't think there's any saving it. I just don't. Anyway, that's my obligatory Texas and Oklahoma commentary for today. Thanks for listening. Have a good morning.